At least 2 people, a man and a woman, died in the twin-engine Aero Commander when it plowed into the alley behind the 500 block of Edge Lake Drive just before 8 o'clock this morning. Authorities are still searching for the body of a baby they believe might have been in the plane. Baby clothes and pictures in the wreckage led them to the search for what may be the child. And at the same time, police started tracing the plane after they found a quantity of what they think may be marijuana among the wreckage. Early information indicates the plane took off from Dallas Love Field at about 7:30. Witnesses say the plane was apparently out of control over White Rock Lake and was twisting and rolling before it struck the ground.
About 9 o'clock this morning, 35 Chicano students walked out of Thomas Jefferson High School in North Dallas. The students were asked to return to classes, and when they refused, were told to stay 500 feet from the school. Dallas police were called to the school, but didn't interfere in the small demonstration. I asked the students what sparked the walkout this morning. They answered nothing, and immediately added that they were just tired of being discriminated against. I talked to one of the students, Peter Aguilar, who outlined some of the specific problems for me.
I don't know what the reasons were, but they wouldn't let us have the Chicano Club like we did last year. And a student was suspended for reasons why an Anglo student wouldn't be suspended.
It does put on paper what you think you're trying to do. Earlier I quoted something from an institution in Washington that explains that. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. This is a way to find out where you're going and how to get where you want to go. It's that simple. Engage in servicing those big banks and the big firms. But now 2/3 of our people are in the service business.
Implementing and accelerating the development of the necessary human resources so that the industries, the business.
Councilman Watt Kimball opposed action that would eliminate about $28,000 in city revenues derived from airspace rentals over city streets. The city has been charging up to $10,000 a year for airspace used over the streets in the central business district, such as walkways, signs, awnings, and other overhead building structures. However, the courts have ruled that the cities no longer can do this. Now the city can only charge for construction applications and an inspection fee, which would average around $100 to $200 a year. Kimball says this will create a serious problem in the future when everyone wants to build crosswalks over the streets because of the city's low fee. The city council decided to postpone action on the proposal for at least a week.
To identify the set of
Okay, let's take it.
A Contact 8 viewer says, according to the National Fair Campaign Practices Committee, this is one of the dirtiest campaign years in political history. The viewer wants to know how Texas politicians are behaving. Mr. Tim Kelly is the chairman of the Dallas Fair Campaign Practices Committee. Mr. Kelly, how have local races progressed?
As far as Dallas is concerned, I think that we've had a relatively clean campaign. Our committee has received a couple of complaints, but most of them have been rather minor and of a technical nature. As far as I know, all candidates, at least all prominent candidates, have filed very detailed lists of contributions, contributors, and expenses.
Can you take any legal action against a politician who has not filed his expenses or contributions?
Yes, the state law provides various remedies to take against candidates who do not file or who file false reports.
What is this code of fair campaign practices that you asked politicians to sign this year?
Well, unfortunately, we were not aware that there was a national code until very recently, and we asked the candidates to sign a statement to the effect that they would not only follow this fair campaign practices code, but also, if there was a claimed violation of the code by them, would submit that violation to the American Arbitration Association, who would appoint an arbitrator to investigate and make a report. Generally, the code provides that the candidate will conduct his campaign on a high level, will not use personal attacks against his opponent or make scurrilous charges.
If you have any problems or questions, please write me at Contact 8, Communications Center, Dallas. That's Contact 8. I'm Cecile Burant.
County Clerk Tom Ellis was on hand this morning to pass on a little voting booth etiquette for tomorrow. The Texas Election Code prohibits the use of visual aids in the booths, he said. Pre-marked copies of the constitutional amendments are permitted inside, but voters are not to take in candidate lists to remind themselves who to vote for, and they should take no longer than 2 minutes to vote. The commissioners then voted to spend practically all the federal revenue-sharing money on voting machines. Of the $1,558,500 the county expects to receive in December, $998,498 of it will be spent to purchase machines, Auditor George Smith proposed. $150,000 will go for machine rental, and the remainder will be spent to retire road bond indebtedness. As he explained to me later, eventually the county will own 1,300 voting machines without having to call a bond election. Final business of the court's day was to commend retiring Director of Parks and Recreation, L.B. Houston, and his wife for long dedicated service. The court and spectators then retired to a coffee and cookie party downstairs. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Judy Hanna.
Paid $78,220. He's behind about $4,000.
Yeah, correct. You say that is discrimination? Well, that's the category. What is the length of time Midway Road to Dallas Parkway and make payment of balance of £15,000? Transfer, subscribe, listed project text, year 72 through July 73. Court order here. Let's read consideration of the signing of the company. 1,300 subscribers. just wipe that out under cancel. Now, all of this 1,300 successful service to the people of Dallas County. You know, every time we have we honor levy, it tells us, and it will be done. Amen. Praise that hand to the code.
Mrs. Ray, can you tell me what happened this morning?
Yes, I heard the roar of the plane. I was having a cup of coffee and reading my paper, and I thought, oh, that's awfully close. The roar was so loud, I jumped out of bed. See my picture window? I was just a few feet from it. I looked out, and coming right towards me, but at this angle was a plane. And I thought, well, it's going to hit, and I was so frightened I couldn't move. It barely eased up over that low roof, and as it did, a big ball of fire exploded, which meant it must have been just past that roof. And it blinded me, and by that time I could run, and I ran downstairs looking for my 2 cats, and that was about it. Then I ran outside and trying to find my neighbors because it hit in my backyard and bounced over into the backyard next door, and I knew that she had her mother over there with her, and I just ran outside running to see if I could see anyone. And I was frightened, and I'm still frightened.
Authorities later this morning established that the plane was on its way to Montgomery, Alabama, when it crashed a few minutes after takeoff. Victims have been identified as George A. Adamson, a 26-year-old businessman from Montgomery, formerly associated with the Dallas Land Development Project, and Mrs. William C. Taylor III of Dallas. Police have confirmed that 2 ounces of marijuana was found in the wreckage, but they are not sure exactly where in the plane the marijuana was. Federal aviation officials say Adamson, the pilot of the twin-engine plane, had not indicated any trouble before the crash, but he was apparently trying to make an emergency landing in an alley in a nearby shopping center. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News, on the move.
New one?
Well, I think we need to sit down and identify them. I've heard about 1 or 2, you know, that.
Acá, el viejo, You have to lift what is system band. What band?
May I keep this and just keep?
Here's a copy were taken, and I can't give you these pictures, but these were the ones that were taken that show the substandard housing act. But this is that I have.
All right.
Okay,
And
but
that's what I was gonna say. I hope these guys are out here.
Person in Dallas that could care less about the goals of Dallas.
Well, all I can say is if the people of Dallas don't, just as I just said in their approach to the problems out of the chaos that the problems of the environment and
There are no guidelines whatsoever in here.
Well, there are no guidelines to most statutory law, but you have to depend upon the faith in the legislature. And I personally,
maybe that's what I don't have.
Well, that's where we have our basic difference. In other words, I read the textbook written by Mr. McCorkle in 1955, and he said you're always going to have imperfections among elected
Yeah, well, this
officials.
is just utterly inadequate.
Well, let me ask you this. What is, in your mind, is such a panacea to a constitutional convention? I personally don't go for the pop-up toaster type of selection of people to write a constitution.
What do you mean pop-up toaster?
I mean the fact that we call an election and the people select somebody who says, I'm going to be I want to be a member of the Constitutional Convention because I'm against busing, or I'm for abortion, or I'm for capital punishment, with no knowledge of constitutional law.
Well, do you think the legislature has any knowledge of constitutional law from the way we behave down there?
Well, I surely do. I'm not a lawyer, but we have plenty of legal minds in there, and as I say, I feel the people are going to select 181 tomorrow. I have faith in the people who will select them.
Do you think? At first I was trying to find my 2 cats to be sure they were safe, and I was worried about Mrs. Glenn's mother next door, because by that time the entire backyards were ablaze, and I was so afraid that she might have trouble getting her mother out, and just things like everything goes through your mind. But I was frightened.
Lake Drive, and says the plane passed just over her house before it crashed with a rower in her backyard. She told me about it this morning.
Eight parents of the students joined the group mingling outside the school. Dr. Ruben Gallegos, Assistant Superintendent for Multicultural Education, acted as liaison between the students and the school authorities, who seemed to pay little attention to the gathering. I talked with the principal, Tom Kelly, who told me he was not aware of any discrimination against the Chicano students.
Well, at the present time, we're trying to find out what they are and trying to get a listing of what they see as the problems. They've not approached me previously with any statements of specific problems that they've had.
The students were again asked to enter the school to discuss the problems, and again the students refused. The school officials brought a blackboard outside for the students to list their grievances. The students were admitted back to classes this afternoon. There were no suspensions. Counseling sessions have been arranged for the students and their parents in an effort to work out the problems. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is June Gray.
With me, I have documented also the affidavits that shows where Briscoe hired illegal aliens. I'll give it to you. In a couple of minutes, I'll have it with me, and I'll give it to you. Now, that's documented. Why don't the people talk about that?
Where he hired illegal aliens on his ranch?
Exactly. I have it. I have it with me. I'll give it to you. Where are they? Right here. I have the documents, and I'm going to leave a copy here with you, where Briscoe has employed the illegal aliens that have been signed by the man that has gone to his ranch. The man has been there. The man has worked there. The man has even brought illegal aliens himself. It's signed. It's documented. And I have pictures also. Pictures.
We have
some 50 lawyers in Dallas County that'll be dispersed throughout the county to observe and make a record of any violations that occur, because I know the county officials in Dallas County for many years have made a very real effort to assure that we have fair and honest elections. That's what we want. We're going to help them in every way that we can, and win, lose, or draw, if we find criminal violations, we're going to pursue them to a grand jury.
Now, the County Election Board, of which Mr. Porter and I are both members, have worked hard this year, along with the county judge and the county clerk and the sheriff, to ensure a good, honest, and wholesome election. And I think that his statement, perhaps, although it makes good news, is more rhetoric than fact, and like Little Red Riding Hood's statement about the wolf, may be a little premature.